also obviously needing the help, as always, of Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, who joins us today. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lovely to see you.
It's the deep and husky voice today, I hear.
It doesn't seem to be getting any better. I don't know what's going on. These lurgies doing the rounds. I've become a sickly child. But I've been boring everyone about that. You think it's bad on air? Imagine what I'm like off air. But anyway, lots to talk about, and lots of it very much in your area of expertise there, Philip. But we are going to be talking about Keir Starmer warning that the British state is overcautious and flabby. I've got to be honest with you, I'm kind of disturbed by any mention of Keir Starmer and Flabby. I've got this sort of image, and it involves him on a beach, and I just don't want to see it. No, thank you. Anyway, in a speech this morning, which, don't worry, we won't take live because we like you too much. Usual rules apply. The PM is going to promise wholesale reform of the civil service. He describes it as overstretched and unfocused, and he's going to unveil plans to use AI to radically digitise the civil service in a bid to save up to £45 billion. I mean, it all sounds absolutely fabulous, does it not? Do you believe for a nanosecond any of this is going to happen? Is he going to actually reform the state? Tell us what you think. Tell us whether you think he will. Tell us whether you think he won't. And I also want to know why you think he will or won't. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text on 87222. Get in touch also on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Also, obviously, going to be talking about what's going on in international affairs. Yeah, apparently the Prime Minister does spend some time on that. We know he does quite a lot. But Donald Trump has threatened devastating consequences for Russia if Vladimir Putin doesn't agree to a 30-day ceasefire with Ukraine. US-Russian peace talks starting in Moscow today. The US envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived in Moscow. This after Putin yesterday donned his camo and met with military commanders in Russia's Kursk region, parts of which have been under Ukraine's control since last year. It does look like those Ukrainian troops are being forced out. So we'll see what comes of that. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Always welcome. Plus, Keir Starmer's plan to widen terrorism laws to include lone non-ideological killers like the Southport attacker Axel Cabana. That has now been rejected by Britain's terror watchdog due to fears the move could overwhelm MI5. Basically, if everybody's on the terror list, then kind of there's no point in having a terror list. We'll talk about all of that with top experts in their field. And of course, you and me as well. As I said, do give us a call on any of the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to ring. Right now, Philip, let's start with Starmer tackling our flabby state. He used this term flabby, overcautious and flabby. He's written in an article for the Daily Telegraph. I mean, not normally you'd think the biggest fans of the Labour Prime Minister, but he's trying to win them over at the same time. Not upsetting too many people in the civil service, was largely Labour voters, as we now know after years of Tory government. Basically saying it's the civil service themselves are fantastic. The civil servants, they're fantastic. It's the system that's wrong. He's talking about he wants to basically change the system, saying it doesn't deliver, it's not efficient, it doesn't deliver well, it's massively bloated. He wants to basically focus, a bit more on domestic issues, and with the bigger state, taking the state down, using AI, basically, things like why are people opening envelopes with people's applications for driving licences when this stuff can almost entirely, there'll be a few elderly people who don't want to do that and do it by envelope. This stuff should be almost entirely online. They reckon they can save 45 billion quid. I mean, I think this is great. It sounds fab. Do I believe for a nanosecond that any government, Tory or Labour, would achieve this? No. Do I believe Keir Starmer will achieve this, who's already set up 27 quangos in the last 7 months? I'm going to say no.
Every government that there's been has always said they're going to attack the civil service and make it more efficient and bring it down in size.
Efficiency savings.
And since Starmer's come in, he's actually increased the size. Now, all of the cries that they were bringing out, I was going, tick, that sounds good, tick, that sounds good, tick, that sounds good, until you mentioned AI. Because the government and IT projects don't go well. There is not a good record in the slightest. And it seems to be the way of wasting billions of pounds of taxpayers' money and just kicking everything off into the long grass.
But even if we're just talking about, I mean, not even AI, but just, you know, everything being digitised. I mean, again, I'm sure everyone's had the same situation, I'm sure. You get a doctor's appointment, you get a referral to consultant, you get a letter. Often the letter confirming the appointment is after the appointment's actually happened. I've had 2 letters about the same appointment, cancelling, both of which were after the time. I mean, it was just, are you kidding me? I mean, I'll say, you've got my email, for the love of God, it's all in the system. You've got, I'm on the NHS app. You've got all my information. Send me an email.
I've just had my letter for turning a certain age of going for
21.
Going for bowel cancer screening.
Yeah.
The NHS treated me for bowel cancer 3 years ago, quite successfully, but that should be in my files, and the NHS bit should,
but that's an automated thing for screening, so it's cheaper and easier to have that go out to everybody.
Well, yes, it probably is, but again, this is where, if we're going to get smarter about everything, it's actually properly targeting it. It's making sure that you're getting things done properly.
And this is the thing, so when you watch, I mean, I'm always amazed, you know, I mean, you see, you know, Google and things like that, so I'm frankly terrified by the fact that, for instance, my husband and I can have a conversation. I mean, let's say we have a conversation out of the blue about, maybe we need to buy a new mattress. Suddenly, all of the adverts, when I go online the next morning, are all about a new mattress, buying a mattress.
Retargeted advertising and your devices are always listening.
I'm of a certain age now, so virtually all the adverts when I watch Sky Telly are for women peeing their pants. I mean, literally, you hit your mid-50s, I'm telling you, and you're a woman, and the hand's registered to me, every single, it doesn't matter, and it comes up like, you know, my husband's watching golf. It's hilarious, and it's just like, you know, 10. I mean, I don't use them. Like, tell a lady or whatever. These things.
You can get male versions.
You can get male. I'm sure. I don't know whether do men need them as much. I don't. Maybe you get the ads. But so you get these kind of targeted ads. But government services don't seem to be targeted at all. And again, totally inefficient. And again, so much of it on paper and just having to get something. The amount of times I have fun even with banks and the like. And you just sort of, and again, private banks and the whole thing. You've got an online account. But to do certain things, you have to speak to someone, but no one answers the phone. And every time you call, ever since 2020, it always says, "I'm afraid we are having a very high level of calls at the moment." You had when I rang at 4 a.m. just to test it out, you had a high level of calls then.
But your call is important to us. Please hold.
Please hold for 20 minutes until someone comes in from walking the dog while they pretend to work from home. I mean, look, and we all know what's going on. The thing is, we don't have a choice. We need to modernise the state. We need to get, you know, the National Health Service not using faxes and pagers, for the love of God. We need to move the state on, do we not? So this is good if you're trying to tackle it. The key thing is, I mean, Labour are beholden to the unions. We're going to talk to Dave Penman from a senior civil service union. They're going to be up in arms about this.
Of course they are. Yeah, because they tie everything into jobs, and when it comes into, you know, the classic NHS, you know, the unions tie it into jobs and buildings. Actually, the NHS is all about care. Doesn't matter what uniform, who pays for it, provided that if you need it, it's free at the point of need. And this is where it's ridiculous. There's so many people interested in their own little fiefdoms, and anything that changes that little fiefdom, they say no. And
you're more powerful and more senior the bigger your budget. Correct. So there's no. It's the same with local councils as well. How would you tackle this? I'd love to hear from you. The question we put out online, and do you believe the Prime Minister can reform the state, and tell us why you can, tell us why you think he can't. I'd really like to hear from you how you would do it. I mean, maybe you run a business. Maybe, you know, again, I don't think you need to even be a business owner to know that there'll be good ideas for how to improve things. I mean, for a start, let's get everyone back in the office and see what everyone's doing every day. Performance targets and things like that. What do you actually do? What do you get done? Why can't you do this quicker? What, you know, I mean, I doubt very much we couldn't see improvements then. Again, we're looking at 130,000 more civil servants since 2016, most of those since 2020 in the lockdown. We've got more and more people, frankly, as far as I can tell, getting less and less done, judging by the state of public services and the time it takes for things to get done. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Get in touch with us, 0344 499 1000. Particularly love to hear from you if you do work in the civil service. I mean, let's face it, you're definitely working from home right now, aren't you? Come on, it's a Thursday. There's no way you're in the office on a miserable, cold day. You're at home. Or maybe you had to put the heating on, so then you decided to go in. I don't know. But I'd love to. Be honest. Don't have to give your real name. Be honest. Give us a call. I would love to hear from you. Let's also talk about possible rebellion that Keir Starmer could face over disability benefits. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to get the spring statement from Rachel Reeves. She's going to have to kind of, row back on a lot of the things that she announced in the last budget, although she's apparently sticking with, the national insurance rise and minimum wage rise. There's going to be a massive impact on business owners and indeed on workers in the next few weeks when come April. But they're talking about personal independence payments, these payments for disability and incapacity, and basically needing to tackle that. We're looking at maybe a £5 billion cut. Of course, everyone will be up in arms going, oh, this person in a wheelchair in a terrible state, they need personal independence payments. But an awful lot of these are going to people who have mental health claims, stress, anxiety, depression, when actually work would be better for them than sitting at home. Yeah. But we're looking at a bill, £13 billion a year personal independence payments in 2019. It's now 48 billion quid. We ain't got the money. End of. We need to get a load of people off. We've got 1 in 8 young people under 24, not in work, not in education, not in training. Something's got to be done. There isn't a choice about this now.
No, very, very much so. Something's got to be done. And when you look at the mental health side of things, the majority are those that are under the age of 24 that are coming in. It's a big percentage. It's, I think, 40+%, up to 48% of the growth in the budgets in there. And for all of those people that properly deserve benefits, and none of us would stop them doing it.
Absolutely.
It's all those that are taking the pay.
Some of them may think, they may believe that they're not defrauding the system. They may believe that they can't work, but they can.
They do. I know one particular business, and it's a small example, but it's typical of a town. And there are a number of employees in that business who are off for mental health issues because they're stressed because of the way their manager has talked to them. And
didn't say please once.
And there's been a complaint put in. So until all of that's resolved, they're getting the doctor to sign them off all the time. Oh, by the way, they're off on holiday to here, and they're off on cruises to there, and everything else. But
on full pay.
They're just not going to work.
Yeah, I know. We just got to stop it. And again, the idea, and people say, well, lockdown had a big impact. Well, lockdown did have a big impact, but lockdown happened in lots of other countries, and they haven't had the same growth in these numbers.
But the other thing, and this is contradictory, the employment rights bill that they passed in Parliament yesterday is going to put more people in a position where they can say, I'm stressed, I'm not going in, it's just too difficult for me.
When did we decide you had to be happy at work?
Yeah, well, exactly.
I know this. It's nicer if you're happy at work. I'm very lucky. I do a job that I really enjoy. But I've done plenty of jobs I didn't really enjoy, and you did them because you needed to pay the rent, and you needed to be able to buy a loo roll, and and tins of tomatoes. You know what I mean? You have to do.
No, it's given to you. It's the government.
But I didn't. When I stuffed envelopes, when I sort of said people's pizzas, and when I cleaned toilets, I don't remember thinking, oh, I'm full of joy in my heart at dealing with another drunken customer, in the burger takeaway, or this mind-blowingly dull job of stuffing envelopes. All those jobs. I didn't, I can't imagine most people, emptying the bins. We'll come to that in a moment about in Birmingham. But they're not emptying bins. Are going like, oh, I can't wait to get up at 3 in the morning and deal with people's smelly rubbish in the freezing cold and wet. I mean, of course they're not. But you do it because you have to put food on the table. Yeah. And I just don't understand why these people go, well, I just want to feel valued and happy every day. Well, but you're not valued every day because you're not very good at your job, and you've got a wrong attitude. And actually, maybe if you worked a bit hard and had the right attitude, you might feel happier. Because I think you can be happy in any job with the right attitude.
Of course you can.
But fundamentally, you're doing it to pay the bills.
Yeah.
If work was just fun, they wouldn't have to pay you to do it.
Yeah, but I've talked to bidmen, I've talked to cleaners who actually enjoy their job because they're outside. They're outside. They're doing something. They don't have to think too much about it. It's a set.
Or you're valued by the local community.
Exactly. And they feel as if they're doing something. I've also talked to binmen who hate it. I've talked to cleaners who enjoy what they're doing. They say, I really love making something, and I'm thinking, oh, okay. And I've talked to others who hate it. You get the same on every job.
I know, exactly. I mean, again, then there are lots of people who are in some very high-paid, wonderful jobs who don't enjoy it. But again, you're doing it for the money. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Let's talk about overseas matters. Let's talk about Ukraine. The US envoy on behalf of Trump, Steve Witkoff, has arrived in Moscow. He's going to be talking to Vladimir Putin. This after Trump has said he threatens basically to devastate the Russian economy if Putin does refuse a peace deal. Putin, of course, appeared in his camouflage. It's not a great look.
It's not a good look on him.
It's not a great look. I don't know if green's your colour, love. Maybe a different palette of olive green would work for you. To Julia wearing a colour green as well. But I don't think this bright green would work as camo. But he was visiting parts of Kursk. Of course, we've seen Ukrainian troops to seize some of that Russian territory. Obviously, it's a bargaining chip if we did come to ceasefire talks. But being forced out now, in fact, being encircled. Now, we understand that this morning, Russia has presented peace demands to the United States, a list of demands. They're thought to include no NATO membership for Kyiv, which basically Trump's already given away, an agreement not to deploy foreign troops in Ukraine. And again, as we would expect it, but again, that's the coalition of the willing that Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have proposed, and international recognition of Crimea and these Donbass, Donetsk and Luhansk provinces and others in eastern as legally Russian territory. Now, I just don't see there's any way that certainly Europe can agree to any of that, other than we have to give in on the NATO membership, because, of course, that's there could be a veto from the United States on that. But do you think Putin is remotely serious about these peace talks?
No, of course not. No, he's out to get as much.
Putin's not interested in peace, I think. Have you not read the memo from Donald Trump?
There's a few worrying comments coming out of Putin, bits and pieces, and looking at other things. Putin, at the same time as being in his camo yesterday, was talking about the Great Eurasian Partnership. Yeah. Now, if he brought in, and there's no indication of this, I'm purely speculating here, but brought in from right flank that a peacekeeping force inside Ukraine was going to be formed from China. That would throw a cat amongst the pigeons. And I think China would like that because China wants to get operational experience in different places. Putin wants to build that deal with, and Trump. Well,
the North Koreans got experience and then realised turns out it wasn't a training exercise and a load of them died.
But Trump doesn't want that link with China. So I think there's a lot to play out here. The Russians are saying exactly what I thought that they would say. They want more territory than they've got at the moment.
Do you think Donald Trump would actually unleash them again? The economic damage he could do, bearing in mind what a huge oil and gas producer America is now. There is always thing about OPEC over the years where they've deliberately, flooded, the market with loads of oil, or they've deliberately restricted oil so that they're keeping the price up. And of course that helps Vladimir Putin, although he can't sell his oil and his gas to the West. He does sell it to China, to India. We're looking also at the possibility of major sanctions on countries like India that buy Russian oil and gas, and then actually, by the way, just ship it straight over to Europe. I mean, Germany's talking a good game. They give more money in a roundabout way to Russia buying their gas than they actually given in aid to Ukraine. So frankly, again, Germany once again not their aid not worth the paper it's printed on. But do you think Donald Trump, after all his lovely words about Putin and his criticism of Zelensky, do you think he's serious about this?
It depends on what hold Putin's got over Trump. But Trump has come out with the right comment. The way to hurt Putin quickest is economically, because the Russian economy is difficult and is close to collapse.
High inflation, high interest rates.
Exactly.
War economy now.
Donald Trump made an interesting statement yesterday when he was speaking to the Irish Premier, Taoiseach Michael Martin, and talked about oil prices being $65 a barrel, which is the lowest they've ever been. If he brings that right down, that'll have a massive economic impact on Russia and their ability to sustain the war. We know that Putin doesn't care about losing troops, so the military side would take much longer to have an effect on. The economic side, he could hurt Putin very, very quickly.
But basically, he floods the market, the international market, with more oil and gas.
And brings more sanctions
the price down, and then more sanctions, And again, particularly making it harder for... And I've always found it extraordinary that the West hasn't put their foot down with countries like India. Pick a side. You've picked the wrong side so far.
Exactly.
You're either on our side or not. I do not understand why the West is not using its muscles on that. You can do what you want, but you don't get to, for instance, get visas to the West for your people.
And Europe could step up and do a lot of this now.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's all been so half-hearted, and then people say, "Oh well, Ukraine can't win." Yeah, we never did. We never did enough. We never did it soon enough to enable that. I do want to go to a break, but just very quickly, I want to talk about bins, because you are actually lots to talk about Birmingham bin strike. It was wildcat strikes gone on for on and off. Now it's like full on walked out. They are not collecting bins in many parts of Birmingham. Rats the size of cats, we're told, I'm not even, I don't even have a problem with it. I don't even have rat phobia, but that's terrifying.
Yep.
Rubbish piling up in the streets. I have no idea how people are coping. You come from Birmingham, but I think you're not affected by this particular
No, I live
strike.
in a different council area to Birmingham City Council. This is Birmingham City Council, who Labour-run council, who went bankrupt because they got their employment rules wrong and have had to give a lot of back pay.
I don't see why dinner ladies should get the same pay as someone working on the street.
It was their interpretation and the way they went through, and they've left it open for the unions to work their way through. We've now got the refuse workers who see an opportunity because they were getting regraded, and it's all down to regrading of posts as part of the cost-saving exercise that the council's having to go through, and they've gone on strike. And believe me, a lot of these places are not particularly nice. I'd use a different phrase.
Even before the rubbish is piling up on the streets.
And now the rubbish is piling up. They are absolutely disgusting. And yet the rats are taking over. As I saw on social media, and I've forgotten who put it up there, but squeaky blinders.
Yeah, I mean, just ugh.